Just about every family has those special tales they share at Christmas time. Passed down from generation to generation, they form the backbone of that family. The Miller family at the Kruger Street Toy and Train Museum is no different. But our special Christmas story involves the family's trucking company, the Korean War, a major U.S. airline, and Toy King Louis Marx. Joseph Edward J.E. Miller of Wheeling, West Virginia, my uncle, was drafted during the Korean War. He rose to the rank of sergeant in the headquarters detachment of the 79th Ordnance Battalion of the U.S. Army, a storied unit which was involved in the logistics and supply of 8 of the 10 major campaigns of the Korean conflict. J.E. was lucky, not just because he was able to survive traveling all over Korea during the war to come back to the United States unscathed, but also he was lucky enough to place a call home from Korea, a very rare occurrence at that time. The results of that call became something we in the family referred to as Operation Santa Claus. Today we're talking to Allan Robert Miller. We're talking about a rather unique event from back during the Korean War. And we in our family like to refer to it as Operation Santa Claus. Would you care to explain?
Well, it's interesting. It goes back even further than the Korean War. It goes back to right after World War II that the Civitan Club in Wheeling wanted to do something for the kids in the city, and there was a place called the Margaret Auditorium that was just behind Stone and Thomas and up where the suspension bridge is today. At any rate, they contacted the plant in Glendale, I'm talking about the Civitans did, and said, well, can you send some toys up? We want to give them out to kids. Well, they did more than just send toys up to the kids. It was quite a large amount of toys came up. And I think maybe my brother at that point, that's Joseph Edward Miller, J.E., he was named after his great-grandfather, was drafted into the Army and was sent off to Korea. And what was interesting about that, I was in grade school when J.E. called back at Christmas time, and we take things for granted, like you can just talk and get an answer. That was not true then. He talked over what was known as Atlantic cable. We'd say hello, and there'd be a long pause, and then Jay'd say hello, and then we'd hear shh. It was actually the ocean being picked up on the cable, and somehow J.E. remembered that about the Civitans. I don't know that to be correct, but I have a sneaky suspicion it did have some impact. And so when he was over in Korea, he was in he was more or less like a Strack outfit, you know, MASH, mobile, and there was an orphanage near there, and a lot of wee little kids. Their ages I don't know, there was quite a few of them, and he said to my father, just off the cuff, Dad, do you think maybe Marx could do something for these orphans over here? Dad said, yeah, I'll call down the plant. So he called down the plant, and now who he talked to, I do not know. That I don't know. All I know is they said, yeah, we'll do something for those orphans. And boy, did they do it.
Okay, so to paraphrase, basically J.E. was looking for a box of some toys for the kids to play with. You
Exactly.
know? He wasn't looking for any grandiose displays or any over the top. He was just looking, did they have some things you could send over for the kids?
Right.
And that was the thinking that was probably going into this also with your father, my grandfather, Robert Miller, when he called down and said, would you be able to do something for the kids? What ended up coming about because of this?
Well, what's interesting is I went up to the High County Airport. That was known as Stifle Field in the beginning. And I said, by the way, do you have your records of aircraft coming in? Oh, yeah, we have records. Well, I got news for you. They had no records of this plane coming in. It was I'm trying to think of the airline. Just a second. Pan Am. The plane shows up, 4-engine piston job. We're not talking about somebody's little hay hopper. We're talking about one massive plane. They did have to bring in that plane because, well, as fate would have it, it was truckloads of toys come from Marx. They do not have records at the airport of that plane coming in. I saw the plane. I was there. I saw they brought the toys up in those days. A 30-foot trailer was big. Well, they had 2 of them.
At the time of these events, J.E. Miller Transfer and Storage most likely would have sent their Allied Van Lines trailers, simple 30-foot trailers, single axle, like shown in the drawing in their phone book ad, and pictures of several pieces of equipment from other areas of the country. Their heavier equipment was in the heavy hauling and rigging division, which moved everything from train cars to engines, steel, you name it, including here where they're working on the Nickel Plate Road piggyback ramps. Okay, so this plane coming in, if I remember correctly, we had heard in interviews back in the 90s from somebody that they were under the impression that Marx may have even put his own controllers in the towers.
Could be.
So this letter turned into literally a couple tractor trailer loads for that period of time, of toys going over to Korea.
Well, they filled the plane up, and whatever the capacity was, I have no idea. I just know that the drivers were happy to do it, and they loaded that plane up. It was a 4-piston job. It was no little Mickey Mouse, and it was all toys. And now, also, that would have been, a lot of it could have been, they may have had play sets. I can't answer that. All I know is the plan at that time was in a transition period from metal to plastic.
Okay. Okay, and of course we also know from our research at that time that several of the major airlines were landing planes on that field. It could take that type of a plane.
Oh, yes.
It became obsolete to an extent when you got into the jet engine era, because then most of your airlines wanted the larger fields and the longer runways like Pittsburgh and LaGuardia and what have you. But at that point, when they were all prop planes, Wheeling was not a hub, but a destination for several of the major carriers.
Yeah, they had such things as later on TWA and what have you, Allegheny, Capital. I can still remember a lot of those, and a lot of them gone by the wayside. But that Pan Am, that was something else. So now you know how Toy King Louis Marx helped bring just a little bit of Christmas magic to the orphans of the Korean War. Marx, who publicly was the founder and the brainchild behind what was the largest, most successful toy company of his era, privately was an extremely generous man. Not for accolades, not for publicity, not for something that would promote his company, but because it was the right thing to do. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Kruger Street Stories, and we here at the museum and at Kruger Street Stories want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a happy and prosperous New Year, a wonderful holiday season, and we hope to see you here in the future for more episodes of Kruger Street Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notifications bell, and you'll always know when we post a new episode. That's all for now. We'll see you next time. Well, that's it for today's episode of Kruger Street Stories. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, press our circular logo on this page to subscribe, and click on the thumbnail to watch this next episode we know you'll also enjoy.